Hi everybody. So today we're going to carry on with the America 1920 to 1973 course, and we're going to focus on the 1932 election in this session. So we're looking at President Hoover versus President Roosevelt. Now, up until this point, the Republicans from the start of our course from 1920 have been in charge. And there's a couple of reasons that I want to talk you through about that, first of all, before we move on to look at the actual two candidates and their sort of election campaign. So first of all, Republicans work really well in a time of stability, okay? So if you look down here, we've got the definition of Republicans. So they're a more conservative party, so they favour tradition and they're right wing. Now, you'll have heard the term laissez-faire associated with the Republicans, and that is their policy towards getting involved in businesses, which is that they don't. Okay, so they have a laissez-faire and non-intervention policy to do with business. Now, that works when businesses are doing really well. Okay, when it doesn't work is in a period of turmoil when government intervention is needed. All right, and that's where the Democrats come in. So they're more progressive. They look to move forward. So whereas the Conservatives, the Republicans are more traditional. So in current America, Trump's party were the Republicans and President Biden's party are the Democrats. So currently, at the time of this recording in 2022, the Democrats are in charge of America under President Biden. So Roosevelt and the Democrats are looking to move forwards, and Hoover and the Republicans are looking to kind of stay in the situation that they're in and not really get involved. Now, as I said, that would work were things going well. So think about your context here before we approach this. So this is 1932. Obviously, in 1929, we have the Wall Street crash, okay, of 1929, and that obviously puts us in to the Great Depression. All right, and so far within those 3 years, when Hoover has been president during the Great Depression, he hasn't done anything. All right, and he's getting himself a really poor reputation amongst the American people because he isn't helping them. So you may have heard of, in this time, Hoovervilles. All right, and they're where homeless people are going to live. They're like shanty towns, Hoovervilles, Hoover blankets, all of these negative terms associated with him and his presidency because he isn't doing anything to help the American people. So obviously, when it comes to a re-election, he's not standing himself in very good stead at this point. So what America actually needs at this time is Roosevelt. They need a president that's going to actually intervene, that's going to get involved, that's going to help them out of this depression, because letting businesses run isn't going to work when the businesses aren't running effectively. Okay, and there's no government support to help the economy during the crash, and therefore Americans start to look towards the Democrat Party to help them out of this mess. So it had ruined the promises of the President Hoover to bring about a new era of prosperity. All right, now this is a really key word for you here. The term prosperity, if somebody is to prosper at something, they're going to do well at it. Okay, so in times of prosperity, people are wealthy, the country is doing well, it's running smoothly, and the opposite of prosperity is austerity. And that is what state the country is in 1932. All right, because the government is not helping the people come out of the depression. So they're actually in austerity, whereas President Hoover had promised prosperity. So the Democratic nomination went to the governor of New York. So he's already got some, people know who he is. It's not like modern day politics where celebrities announce that they're going to run. He has a political background. So again, at the time of recording, Kanye West has just announced that he's going to run for president in 2024. So we'll see how that goes. So Roosevelt had been re-elected in a landslide in 1930, all right? And this is in the position of governor of New York. So he is a popular man. So only 2 years previously, he has been he's achieved a landslide victory. Now, a landslide victory is one where it's kind of like no competition. They have definitely won. So he is in a really good political position at this time. He is popular amongst the people. All right, Wall Street is in New York, so this is where we see the epicenter of the crash and the people who are affected by it. So the fact that he's popular in New York can suggest to us at this time that he's likely to be popular across America. All right, so Roosevelt blames Hoover for the Depression and worsening economy with unemployment above 20%. All right, now if unemployment is above 20%, there's no way we're going to achieve this prosperity, because that's a lot of people who are not in work. And it does lead to homelessness, to people using Hoovervilles, to people using food banks, to people struggling for warmth. So they had Hoover blankets as well. So 20% of people being unemployed is obviously going to give Hoover a really bad name. And we've got cases of people who've lost their entire savings. So really powerful businessmen going from having all of this money to absolutely nothing, and quite a lot of suicides because of the state that people are living in. So Hoover was remiss to defend his record, whilst Roosevelt promised recovery with a New Deal for the American people. Now, the New Deal is a topic very big to this spec. Okay, it's how Roosevelt attempts to get the country out of the Depression. Historians argue about its success and the extent of its success, but it does have a really clear program of this is what your government is going to do to help you, which the traditionalists, the Republicans, don't like. It's massive government spending, but without it, we were never going to get out of that Depression. So in the actual election, Roosevelt again wins by a landslide, and he has a massive, massive number of votes in America, and Hoover has no chance. So when Hoover's going on campaigns around the country to try and get people to vote for him in this 1932 election, people are throwing tomatoes at him, they're throwing eggs at him. It's very clear that he's very unpopular. And another thing about Roosevelt to be aware of is that people liked him. So we'll cover this in number 2. So I will come back to it as we get down here. So 4 main reasons. All right. And we're going to do a little exercise in a minute where you color code something based on these 4. So Roosevelt and the Democrats had positive policies for dealing with the Depression. Second one is Roosevelt's personality and the way he conducted his campaign, and that convinced people to vote for him. Now, it's not only his personality. If you've ever seen pictures of FDR, he's actually in a wheelchair. He had polio when he was a teenager, and it left him disabled. And that really meant that the American people could resonate with him, right? They could identify with him. They thought, well, he was kind of a symbol of, if you can get through that, then surely you can help us to get through this. And his own personal struggles do incite the people to support him, do incite the people to trust him, to be able to get them out of a negative experience in their life. So that's really important. Hoover is just very unpopular. That's the third one. There's no 2 ways about it. It's even if you don't like Roosevelt, you might like him more than you like Hoover. And Republican policies had not been acceptable to the American people. So they've been living now for 3 years since the Wall Street crash under Republican policies, and it isn't working for them. So the only alternative for them is FDR. So you can argue on either side. Is it because the Republican policies are so weak and Hoover is so disliked that people vote for the Democrats? Or is it because the Democrats policies are so strong and people like Roosevelt so much? Now, it can be a bit of both, but you could argue that one outweighs the other. There's no 16-mark question on this one, but that could potentially be a theme in a 12-mark question. Okay, so that would be a nice practice one to have a go at. Okay, so I'm going to leave this on the screen now, and I'm going to go through it in a second. But if you want to have a go at doing this activity yourself, these are the 4 main reasons. So number 1 to 4 is probably the easiest way to do this rather than using colours. So I'll leave this on the screen, and you can just pause the video for a minute and number them 1 to 4 to see which category they fit into. All right, and then press play and I'll go through it with you. So I'm just going to pause in case people want to pause. Okay, so if you have paused and done that, then we'll go through it. If you haven't and you just want to listen to the answers, obviously that's absolutely fine. So the first one, Republican policies had not been acceptable to the American people. It is number 4, right? So that's going to go under number 4. So this one is Roosevelt. So he traveled thousands of miles over America on his campaign to meet millions of people, and Americans felt that he cared about them. So that's one's going to go into number 2, the idea that he does care about the American people. Roosevelt's personality and the way he conducted his campaign, again, that's number 2. Roosevelt and the Democrats had positive policies is number 1. Many Americans felt that their policies did not do enough to help find a way out of the Depression, to find a relief and more jobs. This one's Republican policies had not been acceptable. Hoover was very unpopular. He seemed to be cold and distant. He appeared not to care about what was happening to thousands of suffering Americans. Now, that may be true, or it may be the fact that he didn't know how to deal with it because it's not the Republican way of governing. So that one's going to be number 3. This one's FDR again. So his determination had helped him overcome polio and personal difficulties. So Americans felt he could help them overcome their problems. That's what we were just talking about. So that one is number 2. He promised direct action, for example, more relief from federal government to help those in need, schemes for unemployed young people. So this one is the Democrats' positive policies. So this one we may have heard of, and I'll cover this in the next video on the New Deal, the 3 R's. All right, this is one of his policies: relief, recovery, and reform, in that order. Republicans relied on business to get the USA out of the Depression, but the American people no longer trusted business because of obviously the Wall Street crash, and businesses aren't doing very well at this time. So that was number 4. He seemed to think that the Depression was just a blip, that prosperity was just around the corner. So this is what we were talking about before. Roosevelt seems to be kind of ignoring the fact that the Depression is Hoover seems to ignore the fact that the Depression is going on and think he's just going to sort itself out. So this one's number 4. Or number 3, you could put that in both of those categories, to be honest. So he was a very good speaker and had a warm and friendly manner. Roosevelt's personality, number 2. He promised a New Deal to get industry back on its feet and get people back into jobs, also to create a fairer society. And that one is the Democrats' positive policies. The Republicans seem determined to carry on prohibition. Now, this is a really key thing in this election. So we can't just focus on the Wall Street crash because there's more going on than that. So you know that prohibition was brought in earlier on at the beginning of the course, and actually what Hoover does is say, I'm going to carry on prohibition, whereas Roosevelt says, I will end prohibition if you nominate me as your president. Now there's 2 reasons for that. One is because people want prohibition to end, but it's also got really big economic benefits, because if you end prohibition, employment's going to go up, production's going to go up, the economy's going to go up. All right, so it actually serves to help his New Deal policies. So this is the Republican policies have not been acceptable. So number 4, people disliked him for his shameful treatment of the bonus marchers. So these were veterans who hadn't been getting their bonuses, and they did protests. And that is number 3 about Hoover. Americans felt that they could trust him. Again, number 2, and Roosevelt's personality. And he promised to end prohibition and the social evils that it created. So remember, going back to prohibition, the idea was that it would make society better, but actually it caused a lot more crime. It caused organized crime. It caused gangsters, all of those really negative things that we associate with prohibition. So he promises to get rid of that. And again, like I said, that is going to be positive for the economy as well. Right. Okay. So moving on then to Hoover. So he does take action to deal with the Depression, but they're either too little, too late, or in some cases just made things worse. He agreed to the Hawley-Smoot tariff, which placed higher taxes on imports. However, other nations did the same. So USA couldn't export its surplus of products. So it's got too many things that it can't sell. Therefore, it's not making any money. This damages world trade and helps to push the rest of the world. So not only is he damaging America, he's now damaging the worldwide economy. And again, we've mentioned before him looking heartless and uncaring, the Hoovervilles, Hoover blankets, all of this negativity associated with him. So he called the army against the bonus marchers in 1932, and he drove the veterans and their families out of the city. So men who'd fought in World War I, men who deserved public recognition. And America are really good at this. They're more forthcoming in recognizing their veterans than we are as a nation, in fact. So they don't like that the army is being treated, well, the veterans are being treated in this way. So he is very unpopular. His policies are not working. So this idea of rugged individualism, right, that people should rely on their own efforts to recover from the depression. It's like, how? If the economy isn't moving, it's the government's job to get it moving, and he isn't willing to do that. He wanted to just wait for the economy to cure itself. However, FDR, he says millions of our citizens cherish the hope that their old standard of living have not gone forever. That sounds quite familiar to today, doesn't it? Those millions shall not hope in vain. I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. It's more than a political campaign, it's a call to arms. Now, this idea of a call to arms is that we're in this together, yeah? I want you to help me, but I'm also going to help you. So give me your help, not to win votes alone, but to win this crusade to restore America. I'm waging war against destruction, delay, deceit, and despair. So this is really emotive language, and this is really going to rally Americans up and get them on his side. So he's already taken action to help the unemployed in New York, using public money on schemes to create jobs. And this is exactly what he does in his New Deal. He has sympathy, which is completely different to what we've just seen with Hoover. And as it says here, the contrast between them was striking. So voters knew that he would do something. He promises this New Deal, but he doesn't lay it out, but they know it's going to be better than what they've already got. At a time when millions were dependent on soup kitchens, his words made them feel at least somebody was on their side. So again, he's appealing to the people. Even the middle classes who were still in work responded well to FDR, as they saw him as the only hope to save the USA from violent revolution. Okay, and this is a really important thing as well, because if the president doesn't do anything, if change doesn't come from the top, change is going to have to come from the bottom, because the people, the common people who the depression is hurting the most, are angry, and the president absolutely has to do something. So 4 main reasons that Roosevelt wins, and it's a really, really easy win. There's no kind of, oh, I wonder if he's going to get back in, right? Hoover is so unpopular that even if Roosevelt wasn't as appealing as he is, you could still argue that he might have still won this election. And that's the summary of the 1932 election. All right. So as I said, in the next video, I'm going to be discussing the New Deal. So please join me there. Thank you.